Taking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Wells Fargo Championship. Joining me to break it all down, Sia Nejad is here. Sia, happy Wells Fargo week.
You know, it is a happy Wells Fargo week because I'm so much more excited about this because we don't have Rahm and Scheffler. And again, this is a DFS show. So I'm just saying from a DFS standpoint, I really like just the idea of building lineups, not having to worry about, one of the two best guys. And let's be real right now about Rory McIlroy. And of course, we're going to talk about him in a minute, but I don't put him in the class right now. And maybe I should, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being short-sighted, prisoner of the moment, whatever, recency bias. But I don't put him in the same class as Rahm or Scheffler. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So to have those two guys not in here, it lends itself to build very creatively if that's what you choose to do.
Well, very sweet of those two to call one another and coordinate their off week so that everybody else would have a chance. They have absolutely dominated these designated events here in 2023, and one of them will not win this week, which will be interesting. Before we jump into the tournament, I will remind everyone that the fan vote for the one and done, that link is in the description. So you can go get your vote in for who you want to play in a one and done $20 million purse. The fans are right in the thick of it. They're making some pretty decent picks. So that link is available, and we are going live Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So get your picks in. The field and the course, Sia, outside of Jon Rahm, outside of Scotty Scheffler, there's a couple other guys who are eligible to play that are not. I think Billy Horschel, Hideki Matsuyama is actually back in Japan getting some treatment for his neck. But otherwise, this is your elevated event, absolutely stacked field, what we've seen already a handful of times this season.
Yeah, absolutely stacked field. And again, it's a little different though, because we don't have Rahm or Scheffler. So it's a stacked field with a bit of an asterisk. And I think it's more than a bit of an asterisk, frankly, because Rick, I don't know about you, but when I look at the top of the odds board and I see, guys like Rory and Xander and Cantlay, it just doesn't seem, all three of those guys could win. They have a ton of win equity. I get it, but it just doesn't seem quite as intimidating at the top. And I'm not suggesting you shouldn't start your lineups with one of those three guys or, throw Tony Finau in the mix. But man, I don't look at the top of this board and say, oh, this is the Masters. This is the PGA Championship. It just feels a little bit different.
All right. Well, I am interested to talk through the top of the board, but before we do that, let's talk about the golf course. Troy, if you could share my screen, that would be splendid. This is my website, rickrungood.com, and the course we are at, Quail Hollow. Now, let's just get this part out of the way, Sia, because there is a difference this week between course history and tournament history. So we have played the Wells Fargo Championship forever. Last year, it was not played at Quail Hollow. It was played at TPC Potomac. That is when Max Homa won. 2020, there was no event because it was during the COVID shutdown. And then in 2017, when Brian Harman won the Wells Fargo Championship, that was at Eagle Point because they were saving Quail Hollow for the PGA Championship. And last year, they were saving it for the President's Cup. So I do caution people to look strictly, Sia, at tournament history because they might get a couple of outliers in there that screw them up.
Yeah, and maybe the solution there, just to make it easy, and I'm not saying this is the right answer, but maybe you just want to look at 2021, 2019, 2018. I mean, if you want to go further back than that, be my guest, but obviously you don't want to include 2017 there as just sort of spelled out. But for me, when I look at tournament history, I'm probably, and I've been kind of like shying a little bit away from tournament history in terms of I look at it, but I don't weight it as much as I might have last year at this time. But I'm probably going to be focused in on 2021, 2019, 2018, and then I'm kind of calling it a day from the history standpoint.
All right, fair enough. Well, this golf course, as you can probably imagine, because they've used it for a PGA Championship, as you can probably imagine, because they've used it for a President's Cup, it's a big boy golf course. It's the real deal. It is one of the longer par 71s that we have on the schedule. The scorecard's got it about 7,500 yards, and see, it's gonna ask you for a lot off the tee. It's gonna ask you for a lot on the second shot, and the winning scores have generally been 10-ish. Sometimes we can get to 14. Sometimes it's only 8, but this is not going to be a birdie fest on the schedule.
No. And I think really what you just said there, Rick, is driving accuracy is really important No, I'm kidding. So that's probably something like for this tournament, you're not necessarily going to want to look at too much. Listen, being in the fairway is great. So that it's not it's not a demerit to have your ball in the fairway here. But I definitely think the off the tee game, just in general, off the tee is going to be huge here. We see driving distance. I mean, just looking at this highest correlated stats to success on YouTube here at rickrungood.com, the second and third ones here are strokes gained off the tee and driving distance. And we see that. Like, this isn't one of those where this doesn't really match up to what we've seen with like previous winners and previous leaderboards. This really matches up. So yeah, long iron play, critical. Iron play in general is always going to be critical, but long irons would be the emphasis. But driving distance, off the tee game in particular, pretty important. Putting, I'm probably putting a little bit more import on than maybe just your run-of-the-mill tournament. We obviously have Bermuda grass here, but yeah, the Bombers, keep in mind, though, this is a DFS show. So everybody's sort of honing in on the same guys, like all of us, especially in our single entry tournaments, it's usually similar crowds there when you've got those smaller single entries. So just know that everybody's honing in on the Bombers, that everybody's looking at long iron play in those buckets. Whether you should be looking at that or not is a different question. But so be ready to pivot, especially when you hear some of these guys in the industry, like ourselves for that matter, like that are just talking about guys and you just hear names over and over again. I'm not saying you should pivot off of those names, but just bear in mind the names that are around those names, because if they're not getting mentioned and they might be equally a good play, it's just something to consider with the narrative out there already.
Well, I also think that I think a lot of people, and I'm certainly capable of falling into this flaw of, it's not like this top 6 guys. It's not like the optimal lineup is going to be a bunch of bombers who hit their long irons. Right. Like when you look at the course key stats and it says, okay, well, strokes gained off the tee is highly correlated to success. It's like, yeah, but that's not the only way to get it done. There's going to be maybe a Brian Harman, right? Brian Harman has had good success at this event over the years, right? It's not like those are the only guys that are allowed to have success. So I use it as a blueprint, but not necessarily a gospel.
100%. And I definitely think you should be peppering in your lineups with a couple of players that are that, maybe not Brian Harman specifically, but that Brian Harman type that are just going to be clean in the fairway and decent with their long iron play and can pop here and there. Because obviously if they're really good with the long irons and they're great off the tee and they keep it in the fairway, well, everybody's already going to be on those guys. So just keep in mind where the pivots might be.
Okay, well, we'll start talking about some names and then we'll start talking about some pivots as well. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Absolutely magisterial here.
And we're back. Here is the cheat sheet for golfers. Sia over $10,000. Rory McIlroy leads the way, 11,100. Xander Schauffele 10.7. Patrick Cantlay 10.5. And Tony Finau 10.2. Notably, no Jon Rahm. Notably, no Scotty Scheffler. So we've got a different set of names to consider this week. Where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, just again, I know I just said I'm sort of not emphasizing history quite as much, but the one thing that I will say that it's a little different among these top 4, and you don't usually get this because normally you got Rahm and Scotty and Rory and whoever else, Cantlay, Xander, and usually you have like 3 or 4 that have like really good history. And again, what we're looking at right now is limited to 5 years, but it's really limited to 3 years, right? Because we're not going to count 2022 and we're not going to count 2017 that weren't played at this venue. So when you look at Rory's history here, it's pretty compelling. I don't know if I want to play Rory. I certainly don't want to bet him at plus 750 in the market. I will say this, it's really easy to build lineups this week. So building with Rory, if you like Rory, is going to be pretty easy the way this is priced. But for me, if I had to pick a top 2, I'm probably skipping over Rory. I'm just a little afraid it's probably going to be Patrick Cantlay and maybe Tony Finau.
Thrice a winner at this golf course for Rory McIlroy. He's gaining 2.86 strokes per round over 38 rounds at Quail Hollow. I will send this out in my email newsletter tomorrow, but I will spoil it right now. That is the 3rd best player course combination on tour with at least 20 rounds. The only 2 that are better since 2008, Tiger Woods at Bay Hill and Patrick Cantlay at TPC Summerlin. And then it's Rory McIlroy at Quail Hollow. So as many of good places that Rory has, and he's got a lot of them, this is his best one.
And so here's the thing. What does that mean for ownership? And this is this is not rhetorical, Rick. I wonder what you think here, because everybody's going to know that by Wednesday when they're like finalizing their lineups, and everybody's going to know he's kind of been on a break and, you know, he's had sporadic bad play. But I feel like because it's easy to build lineups, I feel like he does get jammed in. He's not going to be like 30% or anything, but listen, if you think he's going to win, play him anyway. It doesn't matter. I just wonder how ownership's going to fall, because I don't really think what you just said is really compelling, and he's a superstar, but I don't know. There's just so much talent right below him, including in the 9K range, that I'm just not sure I'm going to get there. It sounds like you're probably going to get there, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not without concern, right? You know, I love what he's done here. I love the skill set. I mean, he's missed 2 of his last 3 cuts. He, you know, hasn't played. I never know what to do with the guy who hasn't played in basically a month, right? You know, would I rather see him play his way into this? So it is not like for me at least, a home run, no concerns, you know, 10 out of 10. It's like an 8.5 out of 10. I know what I'm getting myself into. I like everything about it, but I understand there is at least some level of concern there. And I just do wonder what the general vibe on Rory McIlroy is around the industry.
Yeah.
Right now.
I think because we don't have Rom here and we don't have Scotty, and it's just a Monday, and we're just going to constantly hear how good Rory is at Quail Hollow, I don't think his ownership is going to be prohibitive in any way, shape, or form. And for anybody that you think is going to win, their ownership isn't prohibitive because you think they're going to win. But I feel like it's just going to slowly tick up on Rory McIlroy for whatever that's worth.
The rest of the 10K range is pretty compelling. So it's Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau. I'll just point out here, you know, last 36 rounds, just raw strokes gained, it's Patrick Cantlay who's been the best in this field. And I do wonder, Sia, because I'm in on Cantlay. The ball striking's been phenomenal. He's been great. I kind of like this whole thing where it's now cool to like hate Patrick Cantlay. Okay, don't play him. I'll play him. That's fine. I hate Patrick Cantlay. He takes too long. He's annoying. Don't play him. You definitely should not.
Yeah, it's funny because you were talking about strokes gained a second ago. One thing I've been looking at on your site specifically is weighted tee to green. I'm looking at all the weighted stuff, but weighted tee to green specifically, kind of a global stat. And he's number 1 last 24 rounds, which shouldn't be a huge surprise, but I think it's worthy of pointing out. Yeah, he's probably my favorite guy in the 10K range. It's hard to dismiss any of these guys because I think Xander is fine. I think Tony Finau is fine. And Roy is obviously great. But for me, I'm building a lot. I've already built like 4 or 5 lineups because it was so fun to build this week. It hasn't been as fun to build over the last few weeks just because of the setups and the pricing. It was fun to build this week. And I'll tell you, I started a lot of lineups. I've maybe built 5 or 6. I started a lot of lineups. And by the way, I'm going to change these. They're kind of placeholder-ish. A lot of them started in the 9K range, but the ones that started in the 10K range began with Patrick Cantlay.
Yeah, so I think I'm Cantlay, Rory, Finau, Xander. Now it is early on a Monday. I do not know what the projected ownership is going to be. This is all very close, but I think that's where I fall. Xander is just kind of, he's an awkward price, which when he checks in on Wednesday at like 11%, I'll be interested. But you know what I mean? It's just like you have the opportunity to save $200 to go down, get Patrick Cantlay, spend up, go get Rory McIlroy. He kind of gets stuck in the sandwich here and makes it a little bit awkward.
Yeah, and I think he's compelling enough where that even though that you've got the awkward price, it's not like we're actually going to see 11%. It's probably going to be in that weird ownership range where it's like he's 14 to 16%. And it's just like that's a normal number. And Patrick Cantlay is going to be somewhere between 17 and 19%. So like the disparity between those two and even Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau, it's not going to be super significant. I think Tony Finau is probably going to be the lowest owned of these 4. That's my guess.
Interesting. Finau is, I guess the only argument here is he's been phenomenal. The strength of field of the wins has not particularly been great. And you look at what he's done at the designated events, and it's been okay. T14 in Phoenix, T20 at Riviera, T19 at the Players Championship. Like these are all fine. Why is it that Tony's going to be the lowest owned?
Well, because so first of all, Roy and Patrick are definitely going to be more owned than Tony Finau because anytime you're in the 10K range or above, those two are just going to just going to outbid him. And then I think Xander is compelling enough with the recent play in elevated events where it's like, all right, this is my time. I think the mindset for people is, well, I don't play Xander a lot, but I think this is the tournament where I think Xander can pop. This is the tournament where Xander might win. And I don't think people have that same feeling about Tony Finau in a designated elevated event. I think they think Tony Finau can be fine, but they'd rather play Tony Finau when he's like 9,100 or 9,200 in a major, which often he is, kind of in that lower range.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the 9K range where you said a lot of your lineups were starting: Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Matt Fitzpatrick. Then the bottom is Victor, Sungjae, and Jason Day. So I'm assuming a lot of these guys are going to be pretty popular. How are we going about allocating our funds here?
Yeah, I really want to know how ownership shakes out at the top of this 9K range, specifically with guys like Max Homa, who have great history and are great golfers, but recent form has been like pretty bad. Like, we're pulling up Max Homa now. For those of you that are listening on audio, you should probably watch this because you get to see all the ins and outs of RRG. But yeah, this ball striking, like I don't really have an explanation for this.
So he actually was what we would deem the luckiest in the match play. He played the worst and won his group. He also got the benefit of a WD from, I think it was Hideki in that group, but didn't play well there. Didn't play well at the Masters, finished T43, missed the cut at the RBC Heritage. I can give him a pass for missing the cut with Colin Morikawa at the Zurich. It's a weird event with a weird format, but it still does not elicit a ton of confidence going back to a place that he's won, an event that he's won twice. It's tough. That's a tough click.
And for the record, and that's the thing, like, I wonder how tough a click it is ultimately. Does that mean his ownership gets super low? It's just something to consider, obviously. I think he is going to be one of the lower owned in this 9K range, but even at the Zurich, just watching that group, I mean, it wasn't very impressive from Max Homa. Like, he just looked like a lot of mistakes were being made. So it's not like the trajectory has all of a sudden, changed from what we've seen over the last few tournaments. Where I like this range is at the bottom. Like, all of the bottom. So let's say Victor Hovland, Sungjae Im, Jason Day. I mean, they rate out so well for me. Whether you're looking at driving distance, which really that's more Hovland's department, but Sungjae and Jason Day certainly are okay there too. The weighted tee to green is great, especially, well, really for all three. I don't see how you get around not playing 1, 2, or 3 of these guys. And by the way, if you want to play all three, you can start your lineup with Hovland, Sungjae, and Jason Day. It leaves you with $7,567. Now, just to give you a little bit of perspective, now let's do just Xander and Hovland. It leaves you with $7,525. Now, for even more perspective, let's layer on a different one. Rory and Jason Day, just those two, leaves you with $7,475. So you actually have more left over when you have Hovland, Sungjae, and Jason Day versus basically one of those two guys I mentioned in the 10K range, and then one of the 3 guys that I've mentioned in this low 9K range. So, from a win equity standpoint, I haven't done the math there, Rick, but I like all 3 of these guys, especially in an event without Rahm and Scotty.
Interesting. Yeah, the Hovland ball striking numbers are stupid good, and he's only played here once, and he finished T3 and just knocked the cover off the ball. Sungjae has been just quietly going about his business as one of the most well-rounded golfers on tour. He does it great in the ball. Like, this is a phenomenal stat profile, especially the way that he hits it, and he can get hot with the putter as well. And then here's J-Day, who we know has kind of had this little bit of resurgence here, and the tee to green numbers have been really stout. I want to see his history around here. So last year at TPC Potomac, finished T15, missed the cut here in 2021, T24 in 2019. He won it in 2018. And then it was 6 years prior the last time he played it. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty strong trio there in the bottom of the 9K range.
Yeah, interesting. The year he won it, he gained 8.25 with the putter, and his ball striking was just kind of ho-hum. So I just think that's somewhat interesting there. I mean, obviously, if your short game is elite, which it was, I mean, he gained up, what was that, 13 strokes with the short game alone.
That's like vintage J-Day, right? Where he just made like every 30-footer for 18 straight months, and just like, yeah, that was, he did some scary stuff with the putter back then.
I don't know if it should concern me that he's lost 2 out of 3 off the tee, but prior to that, and I don't think it really concerns me, frankly. Prior to that, he's excellent off the tee, and I think he has plenty of distance. So Those are the three guys I like in the 9K range.
I will say I'm probably more bullish on Jordan Spieth than most. You know, the idea of there's a distinction to be made around having to be good off the tee, but not necessarily accurate. Like the rough isn't super thick around here. You can whiff it a little bit and spray it a little bit, which is the only thing that I could say bad about Jordan Spieth, but his second shot numbers are phenomenal. The putter is back. The short game's magic. You're going to miss a lot of greens around here. I prefer to have an above average short game player, and Jordan Spieth is right there in it right now. So he's the only other one that I feel I'm probably higher on than most at this point.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other great names. I mean, Colin's a fine name. Max Homa, if you want to play that card and hope for a bounce back. Matt Fitzpatrick has suddenly come on and shaken off what we thought might be, a neck injury. So the 9K range is rich for sure.
And there's even more names in the 8K range, which we will continue with after a quick word from our partners.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in Tour Championship history. We're down to the Final Four.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
And we're back. The $8,000 range sure is rich with some golfers. Justin Thomas, 8,900. Ricky Fowler and Cam Young at the top. We get the middle of Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, Tom Kim. And we round it out with Sahith, Shane Lowry, Brian Harmon, and Tommy Fleetwood. So still plenty of viable options here, Sia.
Yeah, and this is where you look at pricing and a couple names pop out. We just saw this with Justin Thomas. He was literally, I think, the same exact salary at 8,900 a couple of weeks back. Ricky Fowler at 8,800 is interesting. Like Ricky Fowler is certainly back. It's just interesting to see him ahead of Cameron Young and even Sam Burns for that matter. Certainly a good track record here. And the ball striking has been that's Rory, I was going to say. Yes. But it's still, the ball striking has been so good. With the exception of a couple hiccups at the Wells Fargo specifically.
Yeah, and so the ultimate course horse, Rory McIlroy, 2.86 strokes gained per round at Quail Hollow. The only guy with, as many rounds or close to rounds who has been as good as Ricky Fowler's second, right? I mean, he's been great around this place, and obviously he is playing some of the best golf we've seen in the last couple of years. I expect him, Sia, to be probably one of the more popular guys on the slate. You think so?
Well, no. So I think in this 8K range, I'm not saying he's not going to be popular. I think in this 8K range, you're going to see a lot of flat lies, if you will. Just a terrible play on words. But I think Ricky, Cameron Young, I think Sam Burns gets a little bit of ownership because people are starting to see the upside come back with Sam Burns. And he certainly looks like a good course fit. Terrell Hatton at 8,500 is going to be popular. Tom Kim, probably a little less so. But then there's Sahith, Shane Lowry. I mean, Brian Harmon, not so much. But I just think as popular as Ricky might be, I don't know that it's going to be that much more popular than Cameron Young or even Shane Lowry. And I think Sahith is going to pick up steam as this week goes too. So yeah, he'll be popular, but it's not going to be like a staggering number by any means. Oh, by the way, Justin Thomas at 8,900. I think people will be very interested in that.
Yeah, JT's kind of the lurking giant here, right? Oh, that's the wrong Justin. That's Justin. So let's try Justin Thomas. He was 8,900 at the RBC Heritage, which I think we mentioned then. It was like the cheapest you have gotten him in years, and he's right back at 8,900. I guess I liked what I saw at the RBC Heritage. He gained 5.5 strokes ball striking. He still struggles with the flat stick. It feels like we are going to get a Justin Thomas win soon, but I must admit, Sia, I've probably felt that way for a year.
Yeah, so I don't even think that's the appropriate question for Justin Thomas. I think the appropriate question is, will we see him late on a Sunday afternoon contending soon? Because we're seeing a ton of talent. And I just mentioned Cameron Young and Sahith Theegala. I'm not saying they're the better golfer than Justin Thomas necessarily, but I just don't even know that Justin Thomas is really kind of contending with those guys when it comes to late in the day on Sunday. And so, I think he's a fine play at 8,900. I love what I saw at the RBC. I love that he only lost a stroke with the putter. Like that can bounce back. He might be finding something, who knows, but the ball striking is there. Certainly a good course fit. I like Justin Thomas. It's just, there's so many other guys I like in the 8K range. I mean, if I had to rank them, he's not in my top three. I'll probably take the bait on Cam Young. Yeah. I like Sam Burns and I like Sahith.
Yeah, obviously JT's first PGA Championship came here at Quail Hollow. That was the 2017 version. Cam Young is he's an animal. He sets up well for this place. He finished. Well, I guess he finished runner-up at TPC Potomac last year, but the dude has shown us that it doesn't matter what golf course it is. He can fire away. So is Tom Kim the pivot here, right? I mean, everybody's going to look at this, say big ballpark. Tom Kim doesn't hit it far. He's going to be the lowest owned guy here.
He'll be I mean, Brian Harmon is probably going. No, I don't know, because Brian Harmon has
got
the
a
history.
couple of good starts around here.
Yeah, he does. So you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be Tom Kim, and I don't think Brian Harmon's going to have tremendous ownership, but I think he'll be there. I mean, I look at the 7K range, and I think there's some places to go off of Harmon there. But yeah, Tom Kim, I think, is an okay play. This is one of those situations where a quote shorter hitter can succeed, but he's going to be largely ignored.
Yeah, this would be the guy that I would circle of like, he's not going to model well, right? Like when I go run a model and I put in distance and like, he's not going to model well. Mm-hmm. He's played sneaky better. So I would rather this profile. It's not the 2 wins in 4 starts, but it's gain 8, 0, gain 5, lose 2, gain 10, gain 6, 0, gains. I would rather that. And I don't know what it's worth. It certainly doesn't hurt. He's got Joe Scavron on the bag. All of those Ricky Fowler great results at Quail Hollow were with Joe Scavron on the bag. So I whatever that's worth, maybe nothing, maybe 1%, maybe 50%. I don't know. This feels like the sneaky pivot here to access a little bit of ownership.
It does. I will tell you though, I'm probably not going to do it. I'll probably find pivots elsewhere, or just make sure my lineup construction is unique so that that functions as a pivot in its own right.
Joseph in the chat makes a really great point. The President's Cup that got everybody all hot and bothered, about Tom Kim, and everybody crowned him afterwards, was here.
Yeah,
which I still think he was only like 2 and 3 or something. Like the record wasn't even that good, but it was just a ton of solid play.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good call, Joseph. Well done. Are we done here in the 8s?
I think so. I mean, again, you can make an argument for so many of these guys, so it's just a matter of who you like the best. For me, I think Sam Burns is super sneaky. Happy to pivot off of Cameron Young if I think he's going to get a lot of ownership, but I like him a lot. And then I think Sahith is really emerging. I don't think he's a bad course fit either. Granted, he has no experience here. The
7K range, I think this is where we actually start to see like the first drop off. I mean, it's a very, very deep field, so it took a while to get here. There's still a lot of great names that I'm excited to play, but I think it's tangibly worse for the first time. So Corey Connors, Matt Kuchar at the top. It goes all the way down to Taylor Pendrith, S.H. Kim, Sam Stevens, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of names here, Sia. How do we want to attack it?
I wrote out so many names for this section. So which is standard for a 7K range. I'll try to limit it. I mean, I'll start at the top. Like a lot of the names I like are actually at the bottom in the 7,100, 7K, 7,200 range. But the names at the top that I'm at least interested in, I think the 2 that I'm interested in the most are Wyndham Clark, who I think is a great course fit. Weighted tee to green numbers are great, as you might expect. Driving distance really isn't as good as maybe you think, but it's still really good. Putter's obviously good. Keegan's another guy. So it's both Clark and Keegan at the top of the range that I'm a big fan of. And Keegan grades out pretty well for me too, especially with the long irons.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that started slow and played much, much better. Wyndham Clark did not play well on Thursday, makes the cut, and he was one of the better. I bet you he had one of the most strokes gained. Yeah. So rounds 2, 3, and 4 last week, he gained 8.4 strokes to the field. It was the 5th best mark. The other one would be Patrick Rogers, who got better each and every day last week. Same thing, just played well over the final 2. So I'm not going to skewer them over, one bad round or just kind of getting better as we go along. And both of those guys should still be decent fits for this golf course. So it's pretty interesting how, I mean, I've got like a ton more names I could consider here too.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you let me just go to the low 7K range. I mean, this, you're either going to be right or wrong in this 7K range, but there's just so many that you could potentially be right about. I think for me, when I'm building my lineups, I'm going to have some sort of like a bit of a rotation here in the 7K range. And then in the 8 and 9 and 10K range, I'm just going to kind of stick to my guns. But Clark and Keegan at the top. I think Taylor Moore is interesting. But when we get to the bottom, Bo Hostler at 7,200. He's your friend. He's really impressing me. And by the way, he has the driving distance to contend here. Kitayama is interesting to me at 7,200. Ben On at 7,100. Another guy with really good weighted tee to green and really good driving distance numbers. And then a guy we talk about a lot, but just doesn't get enough attention, S.H. Kim at a flat 7K. Decent driving distance. Doesn't knock it out of the park, but he's solid. And he's just been swinging it really well. So I think he at 7,000, maybe Wallace at 7,000. There's a lot of guys down in that 7-ish K range that can make the cut and do some damage on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. S.H. Kim has got 3 straight top 25s. He's missed 2 cuts this year. One was the American Express. That was in January. The other was the Players. I couldn't give a lot of guys missed the cut at the Players. Not a big deal. I agree. Taylor Moore's been playing awesome golf. I mean, I would even look at somebody like, if you want elite skill, like Hayden Buckley has an elite skill set. He drives the ball beautifully. Even during his little slump, he drove it beautifully. Like, I don't mind that whatsoever. Where is our buddy? I mean, the guy that I'll stare at, and I'd love to hear your opinion, I'll just stare at all week long, is Gary Woodland. And it's because he is phenomenal off the tee, phenomenal with his second shots. He gained another 9 strokes ball striking last week. But he literally needs to out-hit one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour. And gaining 9 strokes ball striking in a field in Mexico and finishing T39 is unacceptable.
That's unbelievable, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys that sort of, I take Gary Woodland when things are trending in the right direction, and then he sort of crashes and burns. I just wonder how Gary Woodland is in an elevated field. I mean, T14 at the Masters, that does tell me something.
Finished T9 at Riviera.
T9 at Riviera. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a fine play.
Finished 5th here last time he played.
All right, now you're convincing me.
I'm just trying. I'm just like trying to convince myself.
This is one of those situations where I see it on a Friday afternoon and I'm thinking, oh man, he's got to make this putt to make the cut.
I'm gonna play him. I'm gonna watch him miss 17 6-footers.
Right. Listen, when it comes to upside, you really just have to try to grade him out relative to his peers around him. And there's plenty of reason to like Gary Woodland and like his upside. I'm probably going to go with Keegan Bradley. I'll probably go with Wyndham Clark instead. But in terms of a third place guy in that sort of upper mid 7K range, I think Gary Woodland's fine as a third place guy there.
Trying to see if there's anybody else. Taylor Pendrith is $7,000. He played well enough last week. Got a little momentum from Zurich, carried it over, hits it a mile, should gain a ton of strokes off the tee. I don't mind that. I'm just trying to see if there's anybody else here.
Ben Martin.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Ben Martin podcast, right? I mean, he just all he does is put up decent finish. He finished 11th here in 2021. Last time they played it at Quail Hollow.
And that's when nobody knew who Ben Martin was, by the way. So like now we know who he is. Like he's probably certainly a better player now than he was then. And he's got the good experience. I think he's really interesting.
I agree. Just kind of looking through. Okay. Let's do the 6K range. Let's find some value on this board. Starts with a handful of guys at 6,900, Aaron Rai, Adam Svensson, Danny Willett, et cetera, goes all the way down to a min price Trevor Cohn. Quinn Riley, Marcus Bird, Kelly Craft, the value here. So if you're opting to go for some of those guys in the 10K range, you might have to dip here, Sia. So what are we doing?
Well, as you might expect, there's actually a lot of names I like in this range because obviously it's an elite field. So a lot of these guys that we normally see sometimes in the 8K range, a lot of times in the 7K range are pushed down. Looking at the top, I think Aaron Rai, Svensson, and Willett are all in play. Even Bramlett. Of those 4 guys, Svensson and Bramlett probably for me. I think Bramlett is particularly interesting because of the driving distance factor at 6,900. And as we pull it up here, I mean, he's been striking it. Yeah, obviously last week he struck it amazing at the Mexico Open, but he's been striking it okay. Certainly not a lot of bad ball striking tournaments. Keep in mind he's in the 6,900 range, and the putter's been okay. The short game, the around the green game's been pretty good. So I think Bramlett. I don't know if this field is a little much for Joseph Bramlett. That's kind of my worry, which is why I'd prefer like if you're going to flirt with this range, why not go up to like some more experience with like a Matthew Wallace, for example, at the 7K range? But again, we're talking about the 6K range. Gordon is interesting. A guy I was big on last week was MJ Duffy, and that did not go well. I mean, I had a lot of good picks. I mean, I was on another guy we'll talk about in a second, Carson Young, and I had a lot of like sneaky plays, but MJ Duffy was one of my quote sneaky plays, and that did not work out. And it was only because his Thursday was horrific. He was 6 over. And on Friday, he was 4 under. He played like I thought he could play. So the stat profile isn't terrible at the Mexico Open because of what he did on Friday. But that's a guy I'm willing to go back to. And that's one of those things where if I was really big on a guy the week before, I'm not just going to come off of him because he literally had one bad day. So it is kind of a risk. He's still kind of an unknown, but he's a guy at 6,700 I'm willing to play. One other name, maybe two, Dylan Wu at 6,700. All he does is finish well. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and every week he's $6,700 and he finishes like T15 or whatever.
Exactly. So him and Brandon Wu played well last week, but Dylan Wu just continues to churn out made cuts and decent finishing positions. When we get to the bottom of the board, I might go right back to Carson Young at 6,100.
Yeah, let me pull up his profile here.
He's been great. I like him quite a bit.
T15 in Mexico, where he gained a ton of strokes off the tee. T19 at RBC Heritage, that's an elevated event. That's worth noting. He had that T3 in Puerto Rico where he had like a 5-shot lead on Friday. Finished T3rd. T3. You could go Young and Young. You could have both Youngs in your lineup.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then go with I don't know. We're not ready for the narrative lineups yet, but Carson Young has played some pretty decent golf. Yeah, Dylan Wu was certainly the guy that stood out to me. I think the Bramlett stat profile looked a lot better than I expected it would, quite honestly. I think that Will Gordon will probably catch. I mean, he's just, for whatever reason, people love Will Gordon, and any sign of life or any golf course where there's a perceived advantage with the driver, it's like Will Gordon season over and over and over again. We'll see what the ownership is, but I don't care either way. I could just let the ownership tell me what to do on Will Gordon. I'm just trying to see if there's anybody else. I would love to go back to Alejandro Tosti, who finished 10th last week, and that was awesome and just crushed it. But man, this ain't no Mexico Open.
No, it's not. But I don't think he's a terrible play either. There was a couple guys right below him as we pull his profile up.
I mean, he gained 7 strokes from tee to green.
That's impressive.
Pretty good.
David Lingmerth, Pierceson Cootie. Any interest in either of those two guys?
No, I don't think so. I would rather Ryan Gerard, who played well, especially on Sunday last week, 6,400. I still kind of believe in him a little bit. I would probably prefer. That's probably it. I don't love it. I do not believe I will get this low.
Right. So 6,600 or above.
Yeah, I would probably rather, although Carson Young is very cheap.
6,100. I mean, trust me, I built some lineups with him, and it's just so interesting what you can do with that.
That is, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that's like almost minimum priced, like literally minimum priced.
That's right. And he's with a bunch of guys that haven't done nearly the work that he has done.
Yeah, he has more top 20s in his last 3 starts alone than his peers have had like in their last 100 starts combined.
That's right.
Let's
put it this way. If you put Carson Young, if he suddenly was at 6,800 or a flat 7K, we'd be like, oh, they're giving some respect to Carson Young. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, so 6,100 seems like really out of whack for a guy that's really been playing well. And I don't think it's smoke and mirrors here either.
I mean, okay, so we only have his last 2 measured starts, and we could have thrown out the Zurich Classic anyway, good or bad. He missed the cut. I don't know who 100%. His partner was. It doesn't matter. T19 at the RBC Heritage, where he gained 7 strokes ball striking in an elevated event. 7 more strokes ball striking in Mexico, finished T15. $100 more than the minimum. So basically, the cheapest you could even be would open up a lot of stuff at the top.
Yeah.
If you started with those, even if you did the 3 that you mentioned, which I think was Victor, Sungjae, Jason Day, Carson Young, now you probably got a lot of room to work with.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're back in the 8K range. So now you can go with a 7K guy that you like, whether it's the low 7K or high 7K range. And now you're right back up to like near 9,000.
I'm going to try to cherry pick something real quick. Last 8 rounds of ball striking numbers.
Oh yeah.
It's like very, very, very cherry picked here. And let me make sure I have. Oh, I know what's going to happen. He's getting dinged for the Zurich Classic standby because it's counting as his rounds, but it doesn't want to show up. Let's see. Carson Young. Yeah, pretty good stroke per round. Better than Shane Lowry. Better than JT, better than Luke List, better than Sam Burns, better than Emiliano Grillo. It's obviously only 12 rounds, but wow. All right. I'm sold, I think.
I mean, yeah. I brought him up on this show last week too. He was one of my guys in the 6K range. There's no reason he should. I know it's an elevated event, but there's no reason for him to be 6,100.
He was 68 or 69 in an elevated event like 3 starts ago. And he played great in that and played better since.
Right.
So there is no reason for him to be cheaper.
Correct.
He can be the same exact price. Wow. All right. I'm under the impression we have narrative lineups.
Yes, we do. We have some really good ones actually. Like they came out.
Are they
strong today.
Are they bank related? Are they money related?
Some are, and some are like themes that just like you would have never thought of, but here we are.
So if you want to build a lineup around any narrative that you want, generally it's relates to the tournament or the location of the event or something, and you want to submit that lineup for us to read, you can do it on Twitter. Use the hashtag SG narrative. Probably better off tagging Sia Nejad as well, and probably First Cut. But Troy, let's see what we've got for this week. Ryan, the fantasy bunker, who honestly is in my opinion, in my personal strokes gain narrative power rankings, is flying up the power ranks.
Oh yeah, he's number 2 in the world. And frankly, Markowski's got somebody like on his tail, like for sure. I mean, listen, if you want to flip him, you can flip him and cause some controversy. But
here's the thing. Markowski's too smart for me. His stuff's way over my head.
Well, wait until you see.
That's what I'm worried
on the
about.
next slide.
I can't even appreciate personally what John Markowski. It's like I understand the greatness, but I don't personally feel it as much.
Well, you're not going to feel this one because it's a musical reference, and you are on record as saying you've never listened to music in your life.
He's too cultured. Ryan, on the other hand, is an idiot. No, he uses emojis and puns, and I'm in on that. So I hope this is. I've not read it yet. I hope this is good, Ryan. I'm pumping your tires. So I hope we find it here. He says, Quail Hollow sits on what was once the state's largest dairy farm. Now I'm learning something. Here are a few things that you might have seen on that farm. This is like a nursery rhyme. How could we go wrong with this? Okay. Colin Morikawa. Moo with a cow emoji. Harrison ND Cotton. Boom. Nailed it again. Adam had windmill. Yeah, I might see a windmill. Oh. What is this? Adam Horse Svensson?
Like the horses are fenced in. That's where I assume he's going.
Maybe. Richie Horse Manorinski. And Hayden Buckley. That's pretty good. Not your best, Ryan, but very good. And still near the top of the list in my heart. At HV3 Tracker says the Wells Fargo is at Quail Hollow. Here's a bird inspired lineup. Oh, for the birds. Here we go. Blue Jay Sunday. Carolina Rendon Todd. Ricky Fowler. That one's easy. Just a foul. Hen, Rick Norlander. Turkey, Gin Bradley. And Baltimore, Roryall. Pretty good.
The Royals.
The Royals. Bonus, Tim Fincham. That's good. And Blue Jay Monahan. Wow, got a couple of commissions in there as well. Okay. Next up. Oh, we've got a new entry. We've got a newcomer to the mix. A rookie throwing their hat into the ring.
That's right. Rebecca's actually a big Early Edge fan. She's always in that chat. So she's come over to the first cut and she's enjoying some of the hashtag Strokes Gain narrative stuff.
She is infiltrating another CBS sports show. That is great. Welcome, Rebecca. Here we go. She says it's my first attempt at this, so bear with me. Bear, that could be a banking term.
Yeah, was that a thing?
I don't know.
Did we just do a thing, Rebecca?
Did she try to? Did she? I don't know. I'm going to say she did because this is all Wells Fargo and bank terminology. Max, Homa equity loan. That's pretty good. Victor Hav lender fees. Hate those lender fees. Jason payday loan. Oof, always with the high interest.
Mm-hmm.
Colin. Oh, this is so good, but so hard to say. Okay. Colin amortization.
Wow. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Landed it.
Stuart home refinancing. Reverse Taylor mortgage. Tell you what. That's a pretty strong debut.
Yeah, that's an excellent debut.
That's a very good debut. Well done, Rebecca. Okay, here he is. Sia's #1 ranked strokes gain narrativist in the world. His name is John Markowski. A little too cultured for me. An elevated event. Sounds like elevator. Love in an elevator. John's words, not mine. Aerosmith, other Aerosmith songs. This is completely lost on me. Here we go. Dude looks like a lay day.
Do you know that song, Rick?
Yes, I know that song.
Okay.
Okay. All right, here we go. Cause I'd miss you, babe, and I don't miss a thing. James Hahn, and that song from the space movie.
Oh, there you go.
Right? What's that space movie?
I can't remember. The one with Ben Affleck?
I think so. And they spoiler alert, there was like an asteroid coming. God, what's that name of that movie?
It's not, yeah, I don't know. Somebody in the chat can help us.
Walk this way, talk this way. Okay, I got that one. Raimi got a gun. That one I don't know.
Jenny got a gun.
Okay, this one, you have to have like a heavy metal guitar because it's dream on.
Mm-hmm.
Penny on. See, I don't know
Sweet Emotion is the song.
How's that go?
Well, I'm not going to sing it, but the vowels get kind of elongated. Sweet emotion.
So it would be Sahith emotion.
Yes, that's right.
Armageddon.
There we go. I think that's right.
Thank you. That's from Wheeler in the chat. Yes, that's what I was thinking of. The space movie with Aerosmith. Okay. I'm sure that was very good, John. I'm sure the people liked that, but that was a pretty good set of strokes gain narratives for the week. Sia, have we missed anything at all that we need to talk about for this week? Pretty interesting roster construction stuff coming.
Interesting. And honestly, in those strokes gain narrative lineups, there was a few names that I think are at least sneaky that I think are maybe if you're building a lot of lineups worthy of speculation, like Chad Ramey, and probably not. Stuart Sink, I think he's an interesting play. But listen, I think this is one where what we've seen lately, and actually, I shouldn't even say lately. It's been since Live happened, where and Rick, you did an entire show on this, where the guys at the top of the board are just winning these tournaments. Like that's just the reality of the situation. I think we have a reprieve this week. I'm not saying Rory's not going to win or Cantley's not going to win, but what I do think is that when you have a tournament, I've said it 4 times already, without Scotty and without John Rahm, it lends itself to being able to almost go old school and build a little bit more creatively or bet a little bit more creatively because you don't have those 2 heavy hitters in the field. Now, again, it's also the win equity is still soaked up at the top, but I just think this might be the tournament where it feels a little bit like a couple years ago instead of a couple months ago.
Who wins?
Ooh,
Monday night. Who wins?
Monday night.
It's Monday night. Like I'm saying, I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, I thought you meant the tournament's finishing Monday night.
No, I'm putting you on the spot Monday night. I don't, you know.
So I've been saying that Victor Hovland is going to win for like a couple months now. I've been like, he's ready. And he usually just kind of like on Sunday, it's just not his day. But I'm going to go with, listen, I think Patrick Cantlay of the top of the board, I think he's got a really good shot to win. But if I'm going with my gut here, it's Victor Hovland.
Those are actually the only two guys I've bet so far. Can't lay.
Wow.
So we are very much on the same page. I would really like to see what I think would be a nice little Ricky winning or Tom Kim. If Tom Kim won, everyone's brains would be fried because they'd be like, he wasn't supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So I think that would be pretty good content.
Another guy that would be really good content, and he has shown us that he can compete on Sunday, is Sahith.
Dude.
I think that would be really interesting. And he's like, right now he's 50-1. Even though like the odds are terrible right now, I think he still has like long enough odds where I think they're bettable. So 50-1 is pretty strong, I think.
He's close. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, we'll be back Tuesday, mega preview pod, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, round by round recaps for this week's Wells Fargo Championship. The fan vote link for the one and done is in the description. Go get your pick in right now. Otherwise, producer Troy does all the hard work behind the scenes, and you can find Sia Nejad on Twitter at Sia Nejad. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.